my channel, welcome back to another video. I'm Messy Jessie and you're watching I look like this because it's 3 in the morning here. I just spit all over my fucking camera. I can't sleep, I'm an insomniac.
What else is new?
Part of me having insomnia is that my brain just doesn't fucking shut off the way that it's supposed to. I am not only awake, but I'm hyper awake. I'm laying in bed for hours or walking around my apartment, cleaning, exercising.
Doing literally everything but sleeping.
And I just can't turn my brain off. So I figured why not channel all of this hectic energy into my favorite thing in the world.
Creating content for BookTube.
If you have been following me on Twitter, you will know that I recently read The Poppy War by R.F. Huang, and I'm not okay. I'm not okay. I have not been this obsessed with a book since I read The Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss in 2011.
2011.
2011.
Thank God I'm a booktuber and not a mathematician.
These characters are my heart and soul. And for those who are sadly not in the know about this book, it is a adult fantasy trilogy. Only the first 2 books are out thus far, about a young girl. I believe the book starts when she's 12 years old. Her name is Feng Runin, and Feng Runin is a poor peasant girl who lives in the countryside who is being forced to marry a man several times her age. She is like, funk that, and begins studying to take the entrance exam. I don't even stutter this much when I'm drunk. I should get drunk. The entrance exam and become a soldier. Plot twist, she gets admitted to the academy, starts training to be a soldier, and a huge war breaks out that she is caught in the center of. And then when you throw in mythical beasts and gods and powers beyond imagination, it gets real quick. So I'm obsessed with this book. All of my tweets on Twitter are about this book as of right now. I was destroyed by chapter 21, just like every single other person who read this book. And I was like, you know what? I would like to read some 1-star reviews of The Poppy War, simply because I am a hypercritical reader. I'm not only incredibly picky, but I like to break down my books point by point. I like to find different ways of reading a book, Jesus Christ. Different ways of analyzing a story, to dissect the various thematic elements of a story. The intellectual component of reading is just simply what I personally enjoy the most, and I always have. So by nature, I'm a critical reader. I don't do it because I think I'm fucking smart, because as you can see, I'm not the brightest crayon in the box.
I'm not even in the box.
I'm the kid eating the crayons. Speaking of crayons, when I was 8 years old, my friend and I were coloring paper plates.
Because we were poor.
She had a candle in her kitchen, and I got up to get some water, and my
dumbass
was like, oh, you know what would be really cool? If I put the paper plate on the top of the candle like a lampshade. In my 8-year-old mind, I was making a lampshade.
Spoiler alert.
It caught fire. As a kid, I was really obsessed with fire, so my
dumbass
was literally sitting there watching the flames lick up the walls. I think it took me about maybe 10 seconds for me to realize that the entire house was about to burst into flames. I was like, hey Kaylee, what? Can you come here? So Kaylee, being the smart one of the 2 of us, runs into the kitchen, sees the fire, and starts screaming for her mom. And that was the end of my friendship and my ability to set foot in that house. Moving on. Because I don't have literally any criticisms for The Poppy War, I wanted to go on Goodreads and read some 1-star reviews. As of right now, the majority of people gave this book 4 stars. 37% of people rated The Poppy War 4 stars on Goodreads. 35% of people rated it 5 stars. There are 34,154 ratings of The Poppy War on Goodreads. That is an incredibly high rating given the sheer volume of reviews. Only 6% of people rated it 2 stars, and only 1% of people, a total of 649 bodies, rated The Poppy War with 1 star. 92% of people that read this book liked it. I am incredibly intrigued about this 1%. I'm interested in their unpopular opinions, and I'm hoping that maybe I can find some legitimate criticism that will help me see the book in a more nuanced light. Because as of right now, there is no nuance. There is only celebration. There is no nuance. There is only love.
R.F. Huang is my god.
Now, I am currently isolating those 1-star reviews, and let's just start with the first one. Right up to about 45%, I was wondering how the hell anyone was giving this 5 stars.
Okay, so you just started out mad.
Not only was it not grim dark, it was borderline actual YA and a rather ripoff of The Name of the Wind to boot. Okay, I did also get The Name of the Wind vibes.
However,
I think that it's an exaggeration to call it a rip-off, considering the fact that the story is not at all a blueprint for The Name of the Wind. It actually differs from The Name of the Wind in several ways. In terms of the borderline actual YA, I can see where somebody got that impression because the writing isn't highly sophisticated. What marks something as young adult isn't the level of sophistication in the writing, it's the target audience. And there are plenty of adult readers who don't want to read heavy, dense prose. Just because a book doesn't have heavy, dense prose doesn't mean it's young adult fiction. So the reason this person feels that it's The Name of the Wind all over again is because the protagonist is super clever and good at everything, who gets a place at a top university, is confused by a quirky professor lore master, and a chance meeting of 2 characters becomes immediate mortal enemies. I don't want to nitpick here, but Patrick Rothfuss did not pioneer
any of those tropes.
The Name of the Wind is by far not the first book to talk about those tropes or even to include all of those elements in a story. Anytime there's a prestigious academy,
In literally any story
where a prestigious academy exists, there's always going to be, and there always has been, a really snotty, economically privileged antagonist that exists to look down upon our poor protagonist that is just trying to rise up the ranks. What do you prefer? Do you prefer somebody who goes to an academy and they're friends with everybody and their professors are all super fucking boring? Nobody wants to read a book about professors that are all literally top professionals. There's gotta be at least one professor that's breaking the mold in some way.
Patrick Rothfuss didn't invent that.
I think it's telling and problematic to compare this to the work of a white man. Don't get me wrong, I fucking love Patrick Rothfuss's writing. Like, he's problematic as hell. And so to take a woman of color's work and then automatically compare it to the work of a white man and say that the woman of color ripped him off.
Yeah, because that's how history has gone.
Okay, Rin is intensely childish and it's already clear that she wants more power for her own sake. Personally, I like that Rin is immature because
she's a child.
And it really bugs me whenever we have fantasy books where the protagonist is like 14 years old and they're just incredibly worldly and mature. This is a fantasy trilogy where the protagonist starts as a child, which means that if she starts out as mature and sophisticated, then she has nowhere to grow. And I freaking loved that we had a power-hungry character because I'm bored with these characters who only want a reasonable amount of power. I want some anti-hero characters. I want to see protagonists that really want to have incredible power just for the sake of doing so. That's something that isn't being done often or very well in both young adult and adult fantasies. I'm so freaking bored of this trope that runs rampant in both categories where you have a character who is scared of their power and runs from it through the entire book and whines about how powerful they are and their burden. One of my favorite things about the Poppy War was that we had a character who was completely the opposite. Then they say she's even more dangerous reckless than Quoth. Okay, wait, so is she like Quoth or isn't she?
Yeah, I'm confused.
There is criticism for how a female character that we haven't seen pops up just so that she can talk about experiencing sexual violence on a mass scale. And in terms of this, I think a lot of people are understandably super turned off by the sexual violence that we saw in chapter 21. And I'm not here to say that anybody shouldn't be upset about that. But the reason that it didn't bother me personally, I mean, it did bother me, it was freaking horrific, was that the female character was given agency to talk about what happened. It wasn't something that we had to watch her go through. She was the one who got to recount it. And this was used as a specific device to push our main character over the edge,
who is also a woman.
It is also literally the only time, this scene is the only time that a female character talks about being raped in the entirety of the book. I would have had major issues if the sexual violence in the book was handled the way it was in Game of Thrones, where it's just page after page after page of multiple female characters being violated. I also felt that the particular character who experienced the sexual violence was important because this was a character who came from extreme privilege, and it was commentary on how war can genuinely be a great equalizer and how women of no matter their background, no matter their original status in society, are all equally in jeopardy in war zones. Oh my god, I'm freaking ridiculous. This is a 2-star rating, not a 1-star rating. I filtered it out for 1-star ratings only. What's wrong with you? Now we're officially on 1-star ratings. It starts out with, I wish I hadn't read this.
Am I about to wish I didn't read this comment?
The section at the military academy with school antics were both boring and juvenile. I can see how somebody would find what was going on at the academy boring. I personally didn't. It should be noted that I was under the mistaken impression that I was reading a young adult fantasy while I was reading the academy part. I think that books can be multiple genres, right? A book can start as YA and then move into adult. A book can switch genres as the protagonist ages. The school part truly reads like Harry Potter fan fiction, complete with Asian Draco Malfoy. I'm literally picturing Najat as Draco.
I'm so dead.
Can we stop comparing the work of women of color to the work of basic white people? I'll really think that these white authors that you stan created fantasy, and it shows. The war that Huang narrates is based on the Second Sino-Japanese War, 1937 to 1945, though the world she makes isn't adorned with the modern technology to match. Rin's setting feels more medieval in conception. I think that's pretty valid criticism, although I think it assumes that different countries experience technology in the same way, which is potentially a mistaken assumption to make. I don't know that for sure. Huang is incredibly graphic about these details, and she's not using her imagination but rather history to write these scenes. To use other people's pain to make your fantasy novel more exciting feels exploitative and incredibly tasteless. It's a line I think shouldn't be crossed. This author is Asian. This author has been affected by the horrible rape of Nanjing massacre, which means that this author has the right to write about it. I read The Rape of Nanjing when I was in high school because I was curious and I wanted to educate myself on this horrible massacre that wasn't being talked about in the history books. And while I was reading The Poppy War, I was thinking about that massacre. And to me, the author was using this book as a way to speak on the genocide and exploitation that took place during this period. The whole point of this novel is to illustrate the effect of war on people and societies as a whole. At no point in time is the violence in this book glorified in any way. In fact, this book does the opposite. The author did an incredible job of showing how horrific war is.
That's literally the whole point of the book.
I'm getting really annoyed with what I can only assume are white reviewers, acting like Asian people don't have the right to reimagine tropes and to take events that affected them and their history and incorporate those events into their own fantasy. Do you know how many white people have used events in white history as the basis for their fantastical novels? And nobody is saying that they can't do that.
There is so much World War II fiction.
Hold on. It took me less than a minute to find these books. The Nightingale, a book that literally everyone and their mama celebrates. The Tattooist of Auschwitz, which yes is based off of a true story, but it is still only based off of a true story. A book called literally The Lovely War by Julie Berry. The Goldfinch by Donna Tartt, which isn't based off of a war, but it is definitely and very obviously influenced by the events of 9/11. The Way of All Flesh, which isn't based off of a war, but it is definitely influenced by Jack the Ripper. So apparently it's okay for white people to base books off of atrocities in white history. but Asian people can't do the same. Got it. Basically, we have a generic military fantasy, particularly during her interactions with the Psych Squad in part 2. Very few have a backstory, and none of them rises above their stereotypical war pal status. I think that that's valid criticism. Rules of anatomy do not apply. No obvious consequences to destroying someone's uterus, but it's fantasy. You can poof it out of existence with some yummy juice and you're good to go. Tell me how you really feel. The dialogue is constantly being used to explain things in a forced, unnatural way. Loads of telling, but no showing. You find out things because Rin remembers having read them, or someone gives her yet another history lesson. Good for her. I listened to the audiobook, and so maybe because the narrator did such an amazing job of performing the audiobook, maybe that's why I didn't get that vibe. Every time that a history lesson happened, I was incredibly engrossed in it, and I liked that kind of person sitting and giving you a lesson or a lecture feeling, but I like lectures in general because of who I am as a person. Rin's superpowers are behaving like a whiny brat, holding grudges, and blushing at the sight of Alton.
Don't act like you wouldn't blush at the sight of him too.
I don't know about you, but I'm trying to figure out if the phoenix comes out in bed. Comparisons, repetitions, and other silly phrases meant to sound poetic. It was only a corpse that was being preserved in chemicals, like pickled vegetables. It was a song of vengeance. It was a horrible song. It was a wonderful song. Now, if you watched my Children of Blood and Bone vlog, you'll know that I critiqued that book for having the same sort of choppy sentences that were supposed to sound deep and meaningful. That's like my biggest pet peeve in all of writing. I can't frickin' stand it. I have a feeling that if I read this book in the physical form, that sentence would have irritated me to no end. But narrator for the audiobook did such an amazing song. Such an amazing job of reading those sentences. I actually recall hearing her narrate that sentence, and this is the way that she narrated it.
I'm gonna butcher it because I'm nowhere near as amazing as her.
But the way that she said it was a song of vengeance. It was a horrible song. It was a wonderful song. All of the intonation that she uses takes these simple sentences and just makes them light on fire. And so to me, they didn't read as choppy, short, overly dramatic, and simplistic. Again, I think everybody should read the audiobook if you are able to read audiobooks and if you enjoy them. Most importantly, like in The Bells, I find the message of the novel monstrous or poorly dealt with at best. The killing of some justifies the killing of many others. I feel like that's not true at all. I think that it's shown definitely by the end of the book that the killing of some does not justify the killing of others, and that people shouldn't be able to make that choice in the first place. Some characters, like Master Jung in particular, exist
literally
to convey that. Warfare in this book also didn't make sense. Why are they fighting with swords when they had bombs? What time period are we in? They had ships but not guns? Didn't make any sense. Probably the silliest part of the whole book was the psychedelic god dreams. Oh my god, I loved those. We're supposed to believe that 8 people can destroy entire armies. All they have to do is get high and talk to gods that no one else believes in. Sure, there was like 1 page describing some rapes, but if that was deleted, this book could have been a shitty rendition of the young elites, especially with the descriptions of the Phoenix overtaking Rin. If you are looking for a great description of what it was like to be a woman in war times, read A Woman in Amber. Not this book that cheapens rape scenes for shock value. Again, I still don't agree that it was shock value at all, and I'm just curious. The criticisms for the way that war is handled in this book is that war is too trivial and not violent enough, or that war is too violent. How do you think people would have reacted if this book featured war, all of the violence of war, and just pretended that sexual violence didn't exist? I personally am not interested in reading books about war that pretend that sexual violence isn't an incredibly potent tool that warmongers use in order to oppress and destroy entire peoples. I just can't connect with the main character. She flies into an uncontrollable hormonal rage the first time she gets her period, and then finds the entire prospect of having a period every month so abhorrent she has her uterus chemically removed. After 1 period. As a woman, this doesn't speak of strength or whatever the author was trying to get across. DNF. Folks that experience periods experience them in different ways. When I got my periods were so bad and severe that I was hospitalized. I never experienced hormonal shifts with my period, but I would have to take time off of school and work. And also, like, we have incredible technology,
Thank God,
to help us deal with our periods.
Rin didn't have that technology.
She had one option, and that was to keep living this way, which if she had kept living that way, she would have had to drop out of the academy and be forced to marry a man 3 times her age, or she could choose to remove her uterus and have agency over her life. I felt like that decision was really, really well handled in the book.
But that's just me.
I am unimpressed, ... and a little troubled. Same. I'll put my review in points. A fail attempt of Nevernight. Another book I haven't read, but isn't the author of that book white too? It lacks originality. Why do we never say that white people who write the same exact types of books lack originality? Why is it only lacking in originality when the author is a person of color? Why?
Why?
Why? Chapter 7 and no violence. By the end, I got bored and started skipping pages. Oh my God. People really cannot decide whether they like or hate the violence in this book. The reviews at this point kind of start to get repetitive, and so I feel like I have captured the heart and soul of people's issues with this book. Now, if you had issues with this book, or if you've heard other criticisms that I haven't mentioned, let me know down below because I would love to hear them. I personally don't agree with most of the criticism, and I definitely am still going to be rating this book 5 stars. People did a really, really fantastic job of pointing out some issues with this book that I myself hadn't seen, and I'm really grateful for those reviews. I'm definitely glad that I made this video. The audiobook was just so engrossing to me. It felt like I was there and just living in this world. I'm still giving the book 5 stars overall, but I definitely see some things in a new light. If you have not read The Poppy War, and if you are able to access and listen and pay attention to audiobooks, definitely read the audiobook. It's just the way to go. Again, not everybody is able to access audiobooks, and some people can't listen to them because of disabilities. So I am saying this while being mindful of that. What did you think of The Poppy War? Let me know in a comment down below. If you liked this video, let me know which other books you would like me to read 1-star reviews of. If you made it this far in the video, comment down below with the word uterus. If you liked this video, please give it, just spit like a whole fucking shower of... If you like this video, please give it a big thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. I would absolutely love it if you became a part of my dapper family, although we are not dapper right now. What else do I say in my outro? All of my social media links are gonna be in the description box below. Stay safe, and I can't wait to see you in my next one.